Sigmund Freud looked at the most sacred belief in human history and called it what he believed it was: a collective delusion, a comforting fairy tale we tell ourselves because we're terrified of death. Religion is the universal neurosis of humanity. Those were his words, and they shook the foundations of Western civilization. But here's what makes this story truly fascinating. Freud wasn't just attacking God, he was attacking you. He was attacking the part of you that needs to believe in something greater, the part that prays when no one is watching, the part that wonders what happens after death. Faith versus reason. This is the story of the most controversial battle in the history of psychology. The doctor who dared to psychoanalyze God himself, and what he discovered might disturb you, or it might finally set you free. The godless doctor. Sigmund Freud was born in 1856 in a small town in the Austrian Empire. His family was Jewish, but young Sigmund would grow to reject every form of religious belief, not out of rebellion, but out of what he considered scientific necessity. By the time he became the father of psychoanalysis, Freud had spent decades exploring the darkest corners of the human mind. He discovered the unconscious. He mapped our deepest fears and desires, and then he turned his analytical gaze towards something no scientist had dared to examine: God. The whole thing is so patently infantile, so foreign to reality, that it is painful to think that the great majority of mortals will never be able to rise above this view of life. Those weren't the words of an angry atheist. They were the clinical observations of a man who believed he had solved the mystery of why humans believe in the divine, and his answer would scandalize the world. But what drove him to this conclusion? What made Freud so certain that God was nothing more than a psychological projection? The father complex. Here's Freud's most provocative theory about God. Are you ready? God is your father, not metaphorically, psychologically. Freud argued that the concept of God is nothing more than an exalted father figure projected onto the cosmos. Think about it. We call God our Father in heaven, and we pray to him for protection. When you were a child, your father was all-powerful. He protected you from danger. He set the rules. He punished and rewarded. He seemed to know everything. But then you grew up. You discovered your father was just a man, flawed, limited, mortal, and that terrified you. So what did your unconscious mind do? It created a better father, an eternal father, an all-knowing, all-powerful father who would never die, never fail you, never abandon you. God equals father. Freud called this the father complex, and he believed it explained every religion in human history, from the Greek gods to the Christian God. All of them, he argued, were projections of our desperate need for a cosmic parent. But was he right? The wish fantasy. In 1927, Freud published a book called The Future of an Illusion, and in it he delivered his most devastating critique of religious belief. Religion, he argued, is wish fulfillment, nothing more. You wish for life after death, so you create heaven. You wish for cosmic justice, so you create a God who punishes the wicked and rewards the good. You wish the universe cared about you, so you create a divine plan. None of it is real. It's all in your head. Freud didn't say religion was a lie in the traditional sense. He said it was an illusion, and there's a crucial difference. A lie is something someone knows is false. An illusion is something we want to be true so badly that we convince ourselves it is true. Religious ideas have arisen from the same need as all other achievements of civilization, from the necessity of defending oneself against the crushing superior force of nature. We are small, fragile creatures in a vast, indifferent universe. Religion is the story we tell ourselves to feel less alone. But Freud's critics had a powerful response. The neurosis claim. Freud went even further. He didn't just say religion was an illusion. He said it was a mental illness, a universal neurosis. Think about that for a moment. Neurosis. Freud compared religious rituals to the obsessive behaviors of his patients. The Catholic who confesses sins over and over. The Muslim who prays 5 times daily in exact positions. The Jewish rituals of cleanliness and dietary laws. All of it, Freud argued, resembled obsessive-compulsive behavior. Religion is comparable to a childhood neurosis. But here's what made this theory so controversial. Freud wasn't just attacking religion. He was attacking billions of people. He was saying that the most profound experiences of human spirituality were symptoms of mental illness. The mystic who feels union with God, regression to infantile states, the believer who finds peace in prayer, escaping reality through fantasy, the person who feels transformed by faith, self-deception of the highest order. Faith equals sickness, but Freud's harshest critics came from an unexpected place. His own disciples. Jung's rebellion. Carl Jung was Freud's most brilliant student. Freud even called him his crown prince. But on the question of religion, they became enemies. Jung looked at the same evidence and came to the opposite conclusion. Among all my patients in the second half of life, there has not been one whose problem in the last resort was not that of finding a religious outlook on life. Where Freud saw neurosis, Jung saw necessity. He argued that religious symbols and experiences weren't illusions. They were expressions of the collective unconscious, archetypes that connected us to something profound and real. Jung didn't defend traditional religion, but he defended the religious instinct. He believed humans were hardwired for spiritual experience. Freud versus Jung. And this wasn't just an intellectual disagreement, it was personal. Freud felt betrayed. Jung felt liberated. Their friendship ended permanently in 1913, and psychology split into two camps that still exist today. One sees religion as pathology. The other sees it as essential to human flourishing. But here's what makes this debate so fascinating. The death problem. Freud identified what he believed was the real reason humans created God. Death. We are the only animals who know we're going to die. We wake up every morning carrying that knowledge, and it's unbearable. Religion, Freud argued, is the ultimate defense mechanism against the terror of annihilation. We create God because we cannot face the fact that we will cease to exist. Heaven gives us eternal life. Reincarnation gives us another chance. Even atheistic Buddhism offers escape from the cycle of suffering. Every religion, without exception, offers some answer to death. And Freud saw this as proof of his theory. These beliefs weren't revealed truths. They were psychological necessities. We invented immortality because mortality was too terrifying to accept. But here's where Freud's own life becomes relevant. He spent the last 16 years of his life dying of cancer. He refused religious comfort. He faced death without illusion. And some say this gave him the courage to speak truths others couldn't bear. But others say it blinded him to possibilities he refused to consider. The critics respond. Freud's critics weren't silent, and their objections were powerful. First, the logical problem. Just because something fulfills a wish doesn't mean it's false. You wish for water when you're thirsty. That doesn't mean water is an illusion. Freud's argument cuts both ways. Perhaps he rejected God because he wished there was no God. C.S. Lewis, who converted from atheism to Christianity, pointed out that Freud's argument was self-defeating. If all beliefs are products of unconscious desires, then so is Freud's atheism. Maybe Freud wanted there to be no God because he didn't want to be judged, because he didn't want moral accountability, because he wanted to be free to pursue his own desires without cosmic consequences. Desire shapes belief. This is called the genetic fallacy. Explaining the origin of a belief says nothing about whether it's true. The fact that children learn about God from their parents doesn't prove God doesn't exist. But Freud never adequately answered this criticism. And there was an even deeper problem with his theory, the evidence gap. Here's the uncomfortable truth about Freud's theory of religion. It was never scientifically proven. Freud presented speculation as if it were established fact. His idea that God is a father projection is a hypothesis, an interesting one, but it was never tested empirically. Modern psychology has largely moved away from Freud's grand theories. His ideas about religion are considered more philosophical than scientific. And here's the irony. Freud claimed to be rigorously scientific. He attacked religion for lacking evidence. But his own theory of religion, It was based on speculation, case studies, and cultural assumptions of his time. Recent studies in the psychology of religion have found something fascinating. Religious belief isn't correlated with mental illness. In many cases, it's correlated with better mental health outcomes, lower rates of depression, better coping with stress, stronger social connections. This doesn't prove God exists, but it challenges Freud's claim that religion is inherently pathological. The science simply doesn't support his most extreme claims. The middle path. So where does this leave us? Is Freud right that God is an illusion, or was he blind to something real? Maybe the answer is more nuanced than either side admits. I do not believe in a personal God, and I have never denied this, but expressed it clearly. If something is in me which can be called religious, then it is the unbounded admiration for the structure of the world. Einstein rejected the personal God of religion, but he felt something he called religious, a sense of awe before the mystery of existence. Mystery remains real. Perhaps Freud was right that some religious beliefs are psychological projections. The angry God who hates your enemies, the convenient God who blesses your nation, the self-serving God who confirms your prejudices. But perhaps Jung was also right, that there's a genuine spiritual dimension to human experience that can't be reduced to neurosis. The question isn't whether religion is true in the literal sense. The question is whether it points to something real about the human condition. And that's a question psychology alone cannot answer. Your inner truth. Here's what Freud's challenge ultimately demands of you: honesty. Honesty. Are your beliefs truly your own? Or are they inherited programs running on autopilot? Do you believe because you've examined the evidence, or because you're afraid not to believe? The unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates said that 2,000 years before Freud, and it's still true. Freud forced us to examine our most sacred beliefs, to question why we believe what we believe. That's his gift, regardless of whether his conclusions were correct. Maybe God exists. Maybe God doesn't, but the person who believes without ever questioning is living someone else's life, and the person who rejects without ever considering might be missing something profound. The mature response to Freud isn't blind faith or militant atheism. It's the courage to sit with uncertainty, to keep asking, to keep searching, because the truth about existence might be stranger than anything Freud or any religion ever imagined. Sigmund Freud called God an illusion. He psychoanalyzed the divine and found only human need, but in doing so he gave us something valuable: permission to question, permission to examine, permission to seek truth without fear. The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. Whether you walk away from this believing in God or not isn't the point. The point is that you walk away thinking. Question everything always. Freud was a flawed man with a brilliant mind who dared to ask questions others were afraid to ask. He may have been wrong about many things, but he was right about one thing. We must have the courage to follow truth wherever it leads, even into the darkest corners of our own psychology, even into questions that have no easy answers. The examined life is the only life worth living. If this made you think differently, subscribe for more journeys into the human mind.